Okay. Hi, and welcome. I'm Casey Berard, and I have Denise Davis Gains joining me. I've invited her on because, as a person who's sharing a course called Acupressure for Labor, I realized that I don't have all the skills that the birthing community needs. And I wanted to go out and get people from the Tri Cities and interview them and get to know them and put that out there for other pregnant humans to see and their partners and support people. So this is why I've reached out to you, Denise. And Denise and I go way back. I was trying to remember when looking at my wall of stuff, which I don't, it was like 2000 or 2001 that I took my yoga teacher training with you.
Man, that's a hot minute.
It's a few years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. It
Yeah,
feels like it was just a minute ago, really.
it does feel like that. Time is relative, Einstein said, and
It's
now
it.
we're experiencing it. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
So I'm going to let you do your intro, but I wanted to just ask you if you consent to me sharing this video across Instagram and YouTube and just educating people on the internets, interweb.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would just caveat that with know that anything that we share today, there's new science happening all the time. So if new science comes along and makes something that we talk about today obsolete, please forgive us for doing our best that we can at this
Oh,
time. Yeah.
that's a beautiful I've been thinking about that caveat and didn't have the words. So I appreciate you giving those to me. It's literally been in my meditations. Like, what do I say? Because
Yeah, we
stuff
can't know.
changes.
It
Yep.
does. It does. And that's the only thing I think about when I'm trying to write a book and I'm trying to share what we do know. We think about, but imagine if we didn't, right? And imagine if other folks didn't. So here we are. And
Yeah.
I appreciate being part of this project because it is important. And I might just put out there, I feel like we don't have enough caregivers in the field of fertility and perinatal care all the way through from conception to our postnatal care and beyond. Like we're short. A midwife clinic in Cambridge closed, so there's only one,
Oh,
and there just aren't enough doctors and midwives and doulas and folks that in acupressure, acupuncture, yoga that specialize. We can't keep enough yoga teachers. So I one of my
wow.
yeah. So one of my passions, Casey probably remembers from back in her own fertility journeys, which I remember, right? We talked a lot about this, and I have my own story in it as well. So I've been teaching yoga since I'd say like 93, 94, and training teachers since 97. And I really focus on yoga therapy as probably the biggest, outcome of a long career in the world of yoga is realizing that we can approach the field from the therapeutic stance of helping people find the tools that they need. So we often refer out to acupuncture,
Yep.
acupressure, massage, chiropractic, all of the different fields because together we make a great holistic team of folks to manage what goes on in our world. And I've been training, I've again, a lifetime. I've recognized that training teachers and training therapists has really become the thing that I love the best and
Mm.
that I'm best at. It's the thing that where I get to use all of my skills. And so, yeah, that's kind of the perspective I'm coming in from. Right?
I love that. I love that. And I mean, I think one of the things I learned from you in training was this idea of accommodation, which has not really come into the mainstream. And that was a skill set I had in the beginning days of my teaching as a yoga teacher, is that I could accommodate people, whether it was like knee surgery or diabetes or pregnancy. And most teachers didn't do that. We didn't like, we aren't all slender male Indian yogi practitioners. Like we all have different bodies and shapes, and
Yeah.
having yoga teachers who accommodate and adjust to that are super helpful in healing and maintaining health and moving through difficult times. So I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about, do you remember what got you into pregnancy yoga? Because I know that was a
Yeah.
specialty that I learned from you.
Absolutely. When I was in my early 20s, I had very, actually from the very beginning, painful cycles. It probably took 5 or 7 years to be diagnosed with, polycystic ovaries and,
Mm,
endometrial issues and it was probably genetic. I know all of my mom's family. And finally, one OBGYN said to me in my early 20s, you'll probably never get pregnant naturally. You'll have to use some type of intervention if you ever want to get pregnant. And by 24, I already had abnormal pap smears, which meant I was on the
mm,
way to having some type of intervention or surgery. And then at 26, I heard about this guy, Dr. Rona, who's Dr. Zoltan Rona, who's a medical doctor who practices natural and preventative medicine in Toronto. He wrote for Live magazine, and just a friend of mine at City TV and Much Music. So we were talking, and she was talking about how she had gone and done some things. I'm like, I'm just feeling exhausted. I feel like I need to talk to someone about. And I was teaching, 15, 20 hours a week of aerobics, and I was working full time for City TV and Much Music and designing a line of ladies' clothing and had a showroom down on Peter Street.
wow.
And I was trying to figure out why I was tired. I'm like, I exercise, I eat vegetarian, and I get good rest at night. Why am I tired all the time? And I didn't really understand, stress and all of those things. And I went to him, and he put me on vitamin therapy.
Mm,
With vitamin therapy, I completely corrected my pathology. Not only was I not exhausted anymore, all of a sudden my pap smears changed within 6 months. And then a couple of years later, and he also sent me to someone to learn how to do the Justice method of birth control because
okay.
I was already married and birth control wasn't the biggest issue. Like I didn't want to get pregnant when I didn't want to be pregnant, but I was excited about the idea of maybe sometime having children. And he got me to learn the natural method. And
Hmm.
it was a game changer for me, Casey. I started to learn, I actually had a rhythm that I really
Mm,
did. I didn't understand. I thought my cycle was all over the place and it was always a surprise to me. Like, hello, it's a surprise. It's going to be on this day. Started charting and realized I was regular as clockwork. Like
ah,
who knew? Like I didn't understand the cycle and she taught me about it. And then the first time I reversed that process and said, let's get pregnant, and we decided we were going to get pregnant, first try
wow.
because I understand body mucus and because I
Yeah.
understood my body and I was taking vitamins I've been taking vitamins since and supplements since that time. That would have been like like Connor was born in 93. So that would have been like 1989, 1990, right? I
Okay.
started
Yeah.
vitamin therapy and I've constantly been doing it since. And I've always believed in alternative, like looking for other solutions of not necessarily, I didn't want to take a birth control pill the rest of my life to regulate my painful cycles so that
Mm,
I could not know when I had some other disease. Anyway, we corrected
yep.
it. And throughout my whole life, I've gone to acupuncture, massage, chiropractic. Like, um, yeah, so that started my interest
Yep.
in, and I took one course when I was pregnant with that first child at Mount Sinai Hospital, and
Hmm.
it was really lovely people. And I can remember thinking, like, why are they trying to teach us how to breathe? We breathe, right? And,
Well,
and
not stressed out people and dysregulated people don't breathe.
right? And I took that course and I'm thinking, wow, yoga could bring a lot to this process. And I started
Right.
creating kind of my own program. And then I started investigating other programs as I got pregnant and went through all of the things that, and then when I had my first child in 93, I was very, very aware of the lack of resources that were
Mm,
available to people to understand how to get pregnant, how to like live in a body that's pregnant, and
mm,
then how to get through labor and delivery because it was a pretty horrific experience in a hospital and
mm.
like being allowed to go through. I was 3 weeks overdue. I went to acupuncture. I did everything. I did any
Yep.
live pill that was out there. I did it all. And I think that that's what started. So yeah, Casey, I think that my own struggles made me want to help other people and families not struggle as much.
Beautiful. It's
Yeah.
such a noble thing to do, right? To take
Right.
our pain and transform it into something better for other people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so I have a few questions that are maybe you'll have them off the top of your head, but you're totally welcome to think about them.
Sure.
What would you say? I think because of the context you gave me, what would you say are a few things that surprise you that pregnant people don't know?
Mm.
And it could be during pregnancy,
Oh,
before, with labor, whatever sort of calls to you.
yeah. When I remember, oh, so many things. Got traffic jam in my brain. Let me just try to discern
Yeah.
what would be like the number one kind of thing. The things that I didn't know about pregnancy. I didn't know it was like I really wanted to swear right there. Casey knows I have a little bit of a potty mouth. Just almost the
We're okay with swearing.
F word just almost came like rolling out there. I'm like, this whole concept that it's 9 months, it's
Mm.
actually 10 months. That
Hmm.
was the first big ripoff. I'm like, are you serious? I've actually got to be pregnant for another 4 weeks. Okay. Nobody explained that. It's not in a book. And they
Right.
say it's 9 months you're pregnant. I'm like, no, no, you're actually pregnant for 10 months. And it feels like longer because none of us actually go on our due date, especially the first one.
Yeah.
And the second thing was, finding out how much of your nutrition that baby takes.
Mm.
That was a big surprise of like, that they'll leach calcium from your bones if you don't take it. And I remember trying to walk into the supplement store to get my supplements for pregnancy because I went back to Dr. Ron and said, like, okay, I'm pregnant and I'm a vegetarian. Is there anything I need to do different for being pregnant? And he's like, no, as long as you're not worried about having a large or tall child. I'm like, okay, no, that's not a, it's not.
Interesting.
Well, he said that a lot of Westerners and Western diet is part of the trend towards taller and larger children and larger babies. It's human growth hormone in a lot of the meat.
Sure.
This is
Yeah.
now, this is 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
So hopefully we figured out some of that by now.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, that's not really an issue for me. And as long as baby's going to be healthy, we're good. But I remember like having to get a vitamin B shot because I was just exhausted again. I
Yeah.
went from early when I started taking supplements to feeling really good, and I'd gotten used to feeling really good. And then I learned to equate feeling exhausted with not having enough nutrients to do the things
Mm.
needed to do. And I was gaining weight, and I wasn't like upset with myself that I was gaining weight. I was getting a little bit more, but I was just hungry all the time. And
Mm.
I mean, I could have planted myself in front of the refrigerator and just ate all day long, as it just felt like I couldn't get enough. And I realized I wasn't getting enough of the right things.
Right. That
And
makes
so
sense.
talking to someone about that and trying to make sure I was getting the right foods so that because those carbohydrate cravings are often a excess copper in your system or
Mm.
excesses of some supplements and
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
deficiencies. So some deficiency will cause food cravings and some excesses can cause other food cravings. So that was a big surprise. And
Mm.
and the amount of pain that could be in your body. I was like, that was a really big surprise of how uncomfortable. I remember trying to reach my feet from behind and do a quad stretch, going, what is this? Like, what is all this stuff on the back of? I understand this, but why is this here? I remember that feeling of not being able to reach my feet from behind or sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a whole long list of stuff, Casey.
There are, yeah. And I've been talking about this with other people that it's sort of like um some people are ambivalent about sharing stuff, and then other people are like, do people actually hear it until they're actually experiencing it? And that can be an humbling experience, right? Like that you think it won't happen to me, or that
Yeah.
you'll just sail through it and that sort of stuff.
I thought I was fit. And I remember being like 2 or 3 weeks pregnant and running up a flight of stairs and just being like trying to catch my breath. I was like, what is this? Like, How is that
Yeah.
even possible? I can't be more than a month pregnant right now. And
Right.
and it's like it was harder to breathe. Like the realization that you're breathing for two people comes on really fast. And that surprised me a lot. Like I,
Yeah. When you're aware, I'm sure a lot of people don't have that mind body connection to even recognize it sounds like that was the start of your journey, was connecting how nutrients in your body and the innate mechanisms of pregnancy change things.
oh yeah, it was interesting. I also remember thinking people who were talking about being pregnant and how awesome it was, I totally thought they were lying. They're like, you're just telling a story. I did
We do
not.
have a Pollyanna. I think some
Oh,
people have a Pollyanna sort of view, or maybe in that moment they're feeling good because they're with another person. And then the moment I can relate to that, where maybe when I'm not with someone, I'm like, oh yeah, I can feel everything. And then I'm with someone and I'm like, oh, there's more flow and
yeah, no,
connection
there's
to the,
definitely people who like being pregnant, but I couldn't fathom that that was a good plan. I'm like, no, they're just not telling. They're just not. They just don't want us to know how horrible they feel.
right, right.
I was just straight up like, this is not fun. This is not. It was mostly not fun. Just the feeling of your skin being stretched, the feeling of, and when the baby started to move, it was way more fun.
Yes, it's
Still
true.
like, can you stop? Like the
Yes.
fact that they're another person with their own mind about everything sitting inside of you was like, right. I don't get to tell you what to do, but I don't really like what you're doing. Can you stop with the feet and
Yeah.
the ribs? I remember, yeah, thanks. So yeah, remember when I said there was a traffic jam? There's a lot.
Yeah. 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 It's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love how well you remember it, and
Oh man. Yeah.
how compassionate you are to the suffering even of it all, while still appreciating the beauty of it all. It's a paradox being
Oh,
pregnant.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of people.
Here's another huge one. This was a big one. I was helping someone deliver a baby, as I've been asked many times over the years, to help deliver some babies. And the first time I had just had my third child. He was 8 weeks old, and I took him in the infant carrier with me. And so he's hanging out in the infant carrier, and this lovely woman is in labor, and we're helping. Every time she had a contraction, my milk let down.
Oh, charming.
Who knew? Who knew that like that just was like no, nobody. That's not in any book. Nobody in any story. No Canadian author ever wove that one into the story
Yeah,
or something, and I was very surprised by that. We
I
both,
bet.
yeah, like just the fact that you can be
The,
that connected to another person, and so that led me to a lot of research on how to help. By regulating my system, helping others to regulate their system when it comes to
mm,
trauma and creating birthing experiences that are healthy, happy, holy rituals and not a traumatic experience, whether you're in hospital or home or in some type of a birthing center. Like they can be, if the folks around you have
yes,
regulated nervous systems, and that everything that's going on in our bodies is connected to the other people. So that just because those people didn't happen to be nursing, they're no less connected. I just,
absolutely.
so that was a big
Yeah.
awareness for me.
I think we ignore that mammalian part of our brain, that we it's there and we maybe see flavors of it, but this really brings it out at its purest, finest,
Hmm.
innate moments. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
breastfeeding. I miss that.
Right? Right? Yeah.
It was a good time for me. Yeah, absolutely. Um, could you think of some recommendation, like uh, now that the climate is a bit more trauma informed, we're knowing that people need help with regulating their nervous system and feeling safe with their care providers.
Mhm.
Um, Yoga, I think, starts that with ourselves, like to do yoga on our own. So obviously, we would recommend yoga, like learning to move our pregnant bodies, learning to move our not pregnant bodies
Yeah, for
in a
sure.
way that feels safe. But do you have recommendations in that you've seen over the years? Because you're going on 30 years of having witnessed pregnant people.
Yeah, I would say like in this It's particularly important because babies come into the world really knowing their mamas and whoever that is, whether it's the, and I don't want to make that exclusive to just the birthing parent. They they get tuned into our hormonal responses to the world in
Mm,
their creation process. So as they're being created, but they're being exposed to certain hormones. And
yeah.
so if someone's happy, there's endorphins and serotonin and dopamine's flowing. We're shopping for baby clothes, lots of dopamine happening, right? And if we're in a stressful environment or a fearful environment and we have, other like cortisol goes up, adrenaline is happening, and they start to sense that very early with tone of voice, the tension of muscles or not tension or plasticity of muscles. All of that is being connected and wired in ways that we're just barely starting to understand. And
Yeah.
so when a child's coming into the world, right, again, this is to them, as long as everyone's supportive in the environment, to them it's like, okay, this is what we're doing next, right? This must be good because it's been good and safe all these other moments, right? So whether the birthing mother is going to be the parent or not, so even if someone births the baby and then someone else is going to parent the baby, they still feel the muscle tension, the hormones that are
Right.
flowing. They're being communicated not just through the blood system but through all of our senses, through all of the afferent and efferent messages going back and forth through the nervous system,
Yeah.
through the interoception and exteroception of experiences. So yes, really important for in the birthing for the pregnancy, birthing, and parenting for us to all look for ways to help to understand our own issues. And even when we don't, I can remember talking to Connor as a, 2, 3, 4 month old infant going, I don't know why I'm angry. And it's not your fault, but
Yeah.
I'm going to go figure it out. I said these words to him and I
Yeah.
said, I've got to figure it out because right now I feel like crazy angry. And I know intellectually, I know it has nothing to do with you. And I have to go. So I went to psychotherapy. I went to a psychiatrist for 6 months. And it was like the best thing I could have done, Casey.
Hmm.
It helped me to start to have a better idea of where all those feelings and emotions were coming from. And I had this 1 hour break a week from this newborn infant,
Yeah.
and where I got to talk to somebody and better understand. And one of his lines I'll share with you, which Dr. Wren, if you're out there somewhere in the world, you get credit for this. He said, Denise, you need to stop trying to make a PhD out of having a baby.
Us cerebral, like frontal cortex people do that though, right? Like it's, yeah.
Oh yeah. I was like trying to do everything right and
Yeah.
reading every book. And, like I'm reading Emma Peckler, I'm reading Montessori, and he's like, years away from, needing early childhood education. Great. And
Yes. Yes.
anyway, so
Well, I'm familiar with that because I came to you for prenatal yoga before I was even pregnant. So part of me thinks our babies like prune us a little bit. They get rid of all the things that are not needed, or old ancestral stories that as we evolve and change and grow we let go of, if
right.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess to come back around to your question and be more specific, that the more we can educate ourselves and not criticize ourselves and talk to whether it's the baby that we want to come to us. I really believe in that end of the woo,
Yeah.
to babies that are inside of us,
Yeah.
to the children in our lives. Like all of them are the same entity,
Yeah.
and our transparency and well, to an extent of like, I'm going through a lot of things that is not your responsibility. So how I'm feeling right now is not about you. So I'm going to learn better how to talk to you about that. And
Mm.
whether it's reading or writing or talking to a friend or going to a therapist. There's so many different ways to better understand that and
Absolutely.
help babies and these other entities that want to be part of our lives recognize that we're complex human beings and that it would be okay for them to have complex feelings and emotions and let us know, Mom, stop. I don't really want to talk to you about it. I got stuff and I'm going to figure it out. Like that's okay too. It comes back at that other end. And when they've been supported and they feel the agency to be able to speak that and not swallow it or have to act it out as much. It's, yeah, I certainly haven't perfected any of it. It's all been a work in progress. And the more I
Yeah.
learn, like the last few years, I've been spending a lot of time with Dr. Peter Levine and
Hmm.
Dana and Pat Ogden and Eleanor Criswell Han, like so many people who've really laid the ground for us all to better understand what is happening, from the cellular
Yeah.
level to
Yeah.
the growth level, like from the microscopic to the macroscopic, and how we can be different in that, and to radically self-accept ourselves where we are rather than being critical and thinking that we should know, because we don't really know
Mm.
until we do know. And then we figure out that we know, be careful, because probably then we're going to realize that we didn't know at all, that we could learn more, right? It's like
Yeah.
that
It
constant.
feels to me like this is a component of self-care that's like beyond bubble baths or like time spent with friends. It's like a deeper, more nourishing understanding of yourself and the separateness and togetherness that come with your child. Like that we aren't just that mother archetype or parent archetype. We're so much more complex. And to give
Yeah.
space to all of that is what I hear you saying is, and compassion and understanding.
Yeah, and know that it's not all. It's like, coming back to the shamanic worldview, that we're all evolving from the past 7 generations and healing, and the work that we do on our healing affects the next 7 generations, whether it's children we're birthing or whether it's the people we're influencing by our way of being, right?
Yes.
And the spheres of existence that are each individual's way of being in the world. And I think that that effort to heal is goes upstream and downstream. Like
Love it. Yeah.
it goes out into all directions. It's the more work that we do to create a world that's less traumatizing, whether
Mm.
it's, Le Boyer's idea of like, turn the lights off. Like, why did it
Oh.
take us until the 1950s to figure that out? Right? Turn the light, right? And it took another 30 years for it to actually happen. Right. And you still have to go in and educate people
Yeah.
different clinical environments that like we could turn the lights down and
Yeah.
everybody could still see enough to do this process, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
that requires a lot of trust on the part. I mean, it's interesting you say 30 years because I went back to university 2 years ago, and the research practice gap does say it's about 25 years. So that's a really slow intake of dissemination of information, you know?
it does very, very
Yeah,
slow. There's ideas we've known for a long time
yeah.
that are just starting to come into mainstream access for folks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I always laugh because I think at about 20 or 21, I knew quinoa. This is my best example. And of course, it took another 11 years for the mainstream to know quinoa as it dispersed through. So I like to think of it like that there is a stream that's fertilizing and moving and disseminating, but it takes time and energy and
Yeah.
growth, evolution. Yeah.
Mhm.
Creation takes time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe that it's just as an aside there on quinoa, then it took me that much time again to realize that the countries that were growing it
Oh,
couldn't afford to eat it.
yes.
And then that made me stop buying it. And
Mm,
I'm like, hang on a second, until we have to fix this supply issue
yeah.
before I want to participate in anyway. So that's enough.
Yeah, there's so many layers once you step into that, I think, as a whether you
Yeah.
identify as a mother or a parent, or that there's a responsibility. Yeah.
As a woke human being, we got to keep waking up.
Yeah.
Right? Keep
Yeah.
waking up and like, oh, okay. There's always something that we can evolve in to not stress over that. Not
Mm.
right
Any
to not
advice on that?
it's to know that it comes back to Yoga Sutras, right?
Yeah.
Like the yamas and the niyamas. And the niyamas, one of the last ones is, like self-study. So we examine ourselves and what we're doing and how that relates to the world. But then at the end of the day, give it up and
Mm.
surrender. At the end of
Mm.
the idea is to surrender and know that you're doing everything that you can to be an activist, to be a revolutionary, to be a revivalist of important issues. But if you don't release it and trust that you are co-creating that, like even though we haven't spent time together, I feel 100% certain that there's things we've co-created, that
Hmm.
one of us realized that we co-created those threads of change and
Absolutely. I see that through my
control.
practice. Yep. I feel the, what would I always continuously talk to my mentors and teachers and people who've been in my life, even if they're across the sea or the ocean. To me, they're part of, I call it the morphic field. They're in my synapses and neural pathways. Yeah, there's an interconnection of consciousness. We're getting really woo now, but yeah, yoga can, that coming into union can take you there. And then Tantra can show you the weaving of all of that. I went sort of heavy into Tantra and Tibetan Buddhism.
Oh,
So
wonderful. Right.
yeah, love the chakras and healing with those. So there's so much that yoga can offer, the
I
whole
think
process, eh?
I think we'll eventually better understand too the interconnections between acupuncture and acupressure and the um, not just like sen lines or the
Yeah,
chi lines, but those intersections of all of the nadis, all
all
of
of it.
and inside and outside. And I think that the same as we can do distance healing, I think that sometimes we'll be able to do distance acupuncture of so
Yeah,
that that person can completely understand that point. They can just take their attention to that point and
absolutely.
go in a deep uh, both like and we'll be able to see the brain chemistry as they do it and change it.
Absolutely. I always say I speak like different medical languages, but you're talking about what I love, and you're talking about the sixth and seventh chakra interconnections that science just hasn't caught up with yet, right? We have to still evolve our heart chakra. There's that being stuck is causing that dissemination of information and wisdom. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just that,
Yeah.
like the whole neurobiology piece of it's just been going leaps and bounds. Like if you think
Leaps.
about when you first did your yoga teacher training, if everything we knew about yoga would have fit into a baseball, a
Hmm.
softball, bigger one,
Yeah,
softball, right? That would now take up like 4 football stadiums.
totally. Yeah.
Like it's there's been that much research and science and brilliant minds and evolution. All of that has been brought to that the end. We're getting to benefit. We just stand on all of their shoulders when we do this work, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so too. It's beautiful. It nourishes our leaves if we were all trees.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I want to respect both of our times. I think we could, everyone I've been interviewing, it's like we could talk forever. We all have different things that we're passionate about. And I'm always intrigued by what the questions give, because they're the same questions asking, but different people bring out different wisdom.
Awesome.
Um, Maybe I'll just ask two things. One, anything that you just feel really called to share with the birthing community, we'll say, and then how people can get a hold of you and your yoga studio so that if they want to connect with you, I know you have virtual and in-person stuff.
Thank
So
you.
that's beautiful. Yeah.
So for birthing as make a plan, because it gives you something that you can create when you're in a state of mind to know your own soul and your own heart
Mm-hmm.
of what you would, your vision for what birthing looks like. And communicate that to all the people who are going to be involved in your process, not just in giving them a written copy of it, but by having this kind of a conversation with them.
Yeah.
And this is what I would really like it to look like. And you can ask your friend and ask other professionals that you work with what they're about their birthing stories, about the things that they love the most when you create that plan, and communicate it to the people you love so that you have multiple advocates for you when it gets hard.
It's so true. Yeah.
When it gets hard, and there are people who love you are going to want to push you towards options that maybe you don't want to take, but feel obliged to take, feel all kinds of feelings. Like if we come from a background of neglect, it's really difficult to have our own agency in situations like this where there is pain and you're taking a lot of attention of the professionals around you. That's really uncomfortable for folks who've had a lot of neglect in their childhood,
Mm,
adverse childhood experiences. Lots of our old stuff wants to come up. And it doesn't mean we, have to allow that to dominate that experience. But if you've got people on your team that know you and your wishes, and I just come to my grandson's birth on this one.
mm,
My grandson's mama invited me into the process, and unfortunately for her and for him, I was very familiar with all of this. And her mom doesn't come from that background. So when things got hard, her mom was pushing her to go to the hospital, pushing her to take
mm,
medication, pushing her and really pulling her out of her experience.
yeah.
So I took away from some time I could have spent with her, and I went and helped to calm mama and
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
remind her that Connor knows the birth plan and that Keaton knows the birth plan. And our job is to let them lead us. The best we
Mm,
can do is to keep holding space for what they want. And
yeah.
it's so hard. It's really, really a hard thing to do when you just want to fix everything. You want to fix everything. So that's my best advice for the whole birthing process. Make a plan and know that it might not look exactly. It might look exactly. I know lots of people, their birthing went exactly as they planned. And I know lots of people that it didn't. We eventually
Mm,
have to transition to hospital,
mm,
and we had to do some different things in hospital. And she did get to vaginally deliver, but it took 36 hours and a lot of time of
yeah.
just really listening to their wishes. And she did have the birth that she wanted. It didn't look exactly like her plan, but there were enough people to advocate for her to get exactly what she wanted. And at the end of the day, she and Raven were both healthy and happy, and
Mm,
can't ask for more than that, right?
yeah. And what I really hear, and the trauma specialists talk about this, is the safe and social, the trust that surrounded her during that whole process sounds just amazing. Even that you could tend to the mother-in-law, it sounds like is like helping regulate her nervous system, and her fear when you feel out of control is a huge thing.
Right, like it was just, and that was the toughest part of the whole thing,
Yeah.
was help someone who was trying to impose their will and to allow it to be their story and not
Yeah.
someone else's story, right? Whatever
Yeah.
that was. When
Yeah.
they were ready to go to the hospital, they went to the hospital.
Yeah,
Not
because
because,
they innately knew. Yeah. Yeah.
yep, yep, exactly. So, and if people are interested in what we're talking about, and an approach to yoga that's very much
Yes.
about the individual, even though we do offer group classes. And they
Yeah.
can find us at atlasstudio.com, and they can reach out to me at info@atlasstudio.com. Super easy. and we're all over the place. We teach in person in Cambridge area, but we're
Yes.
online, and we do have um, a little thing for fertility for prenatal and postnatal. We have a membership thing where they can get one-on-one uh, coaching and support and access to recorded classes, access to live online stuff, and some access to in-person as well. And then, a resource of information and access to people who have experience with all of those stages, right? So,
Yeah. And that's so helpful, like having guides and supports who have been there and don't feel the fear in their nervous system, that they trust the body and the process.
yeah,
That's so beautiful. I
yeah.
love it.
So
I love the journey we just went on in
awesome.
exploring birth and disseminating new information.
And
Yeah.
if you're doing, and I would say to the world, if Casey's doing acupuncture, if I was at that stage of life of having babies, that's where I would be going because
Aw.
I
Thank
love
you.
you have an innate ability to really understand people and make space for them and create experiences that honor everything we're talking about here today too. So, yay,
Yeah.
yay that
Yeah.
you're doing your
So
work.
just I'm not doing acupuncture anymore. I'm actually leaning towards supporting people in their fear and in the pain of labor. So the
Oh,
acupressure for labor course is like kind of football plays with video that they can download right when
amazing.
they arrive at wherever and just push, oh, are your hips bugging you? Are your cervix not dilating? They just literally click on that and it's super easy to navigate with 3 different views of the acupressure points. And then we're hoping to fill it out a little bit more. So we'll be recording, yeah, postures and things too to add into that and
Wonderful.
doing
Wonderful.
one-on-ones eventually, yeah, with helping partners learn to navigate. Because I think that's, you and I are sort of alluding to that
Yeah.
how do people connect when we're feeling not grounded and safe? And how do you get back to that place of being
Mm-hmm.
maybe even like Buddhists would say groundless, that it's actually safer in the groundlessness to flow with that. And yeah, it's
I love that.
beautiful.
That's a great analogy, right? Great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got a river analogy of like early labor is like a lazy river, and then you hit the rapids, in the second stage, and then the baby comes out at the most fieriest moment of the rapids where you're just hanging on and letting go, and then you wind up in this beautiful waiting pool where people have hopefully food and nourishment and love, and yeah,
Beauty. Beauty. I loved all that. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, well, I will bid you adieu and thank you so much for your time and wisdom and knowledge. And we'll connect again. And I hope people connect with you and your um, yoga studio because it offers so much.
Awesome. Thank you,
Yeah.
Casey.
Yeah.
And
Thank you,
the
Denise.
whole thing. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Bye
Bye.
bye.